Hi everyone, I'm just going to talk about today about how to do a manual conversion on your, this is a 2004 350 GT8, which is the CVT Auto Skylines. It's the same as the G35s in the States as well. Now, I'm halfway through the manual conversion. I did do an intro video on it the other day, just about what I was going to do with the manual conversion, but I've got a fair way through the manual conversion now, and I wanted to do another video just to sort of show what I found along the way, what you may need and what you actually don't need for a manual conversion on one of these, and a few things that I've had to bypass and stuff like that. So where we're at the moment, the gearbox is in, obviously the master cylinder's in, the slave cylinder is all mounted up. That all stuff fits really easy. I'll jump underneath. Okay, so you can see the gearbox is in. There's a little bit of wiring you've got to do. So this is only if you've got the CVT Auto, which is the Nissan X-Droid Auto. You need to trick the car to think it's in drive, not in neutral, because if you have the car in neutral, it'll put the thing in. If a lot of you guys have probably revved up your car when it's in neutral, if you've got the auto, and it'll actually get to a fuel cut at probably about 2,500 RPM. It won't let you rev it past it. So you've got to trick the ECU to thinking it's into drive. So what you need to do is this plug, which this is your gear selector plug on, you can see I've just sort of dodged it up at the moment. This is the gear selector plug off the CVT, because this is the auto wiring loom. So what you need to do, you need to get the yellow wire and one of the black wires. You've got to check which one, because one of the black wires has power and one of the other ones doesn't. So you can see on there, the black wire that doesn't have power, you put that to the yellow, and that one there will give you it'll trick the car to think it's in drive. The other black wire has power to it, which is your reverse lights, which is also the blue wire which is in there as well. So you need to hook that up and do a few other things, which I haven't got around to doing that yet. All your other wiring, which is from your CVT, this is all pretty much useless now. Yeah, and on the actual manual gearbox, I'll just get a light. Now on the manual gearbox, you've only got two plugs. You've got an output here, one's neutral, the other one's your reverse switch. They're the only two you need to use. You don't even need to actually hook up the neutral one. The only one you've got to hook up is your reverse light if you want to have reverse lights on it. Now, with the gearbox bolts straight in. It doesn't need any modifications or anything like that changed on it. The manual crossmember, manual and CVT are both the same crossmember. If you have a CVT, I think you've got to spin the crossmember around, I think's the thing, but I got my gearbox with a manual crossmember. The tail shafts, so you can't retain your tail shaft. You have to get a manual tail shaft to change your coupling. If you've got the CV8, you need to change this coupling here on the diff, but you can either put a manual diff in it or just change that output coupling on it. But the tail shafts fit straight in. There's no, like if you get a 350 GT coupe set of tail shaft, like the front section, I'll just move this light around. So if you get the front section and the rear section, they just bolt straight in. The only cutting it needs is just where your shifter sits here. You'll need to cut that, and you'll need to also modify the handbrake, and we'll go up top and we'll have a look at that now. You'll need this part here which mounts to the rear cables. The rear cables you don't need to change, you just need this section here which goes from there to the actual handbrake lever itself. So that piece in there, that's the only bit that you'll need that's completely different, because the cable for the actual foot one goes all the way to the very front of the car. So that's it for underneath. Now, one thing you'll need to remove is this insert. This sits in the back of the flywheel, and this is so the auto torque converter has somewhere to line up. So you need to remove this, and what you'll find is once you get your input shaft, like the spigot bearing bush, like this type of bush here, it actually won't fit. If you get just the normal 350Z or V35 Skyline, this won't fit. It just needs to be sanded down just only a little bit, just so it goes in nice and firm. And I had a couple of them, and this test I did a little bit too much, and it was too loose in there. And then I did another one, it was just nice and firm. These need to sit flush with your crankshaft. When you look at the back of the crankshaft, there's a step inside where the flywheel sits on, and these have to sit flush with the inner step on the crankshaft. So far I'm still running the auto ECU, the auto wiring loom. I haven't changed anything like that around on the car. The only modification you need to do in here is you need to put switched ignition source to this wire here. Now I'll do my best to show the exact wire that you need to modify. So if you look down here in the very bottom right hand corner of your fuse block, there's a grey wire with a pink trace on it. Now you can see that wire just there. That wire there needs a switched ignition source to it. So at the moment, because I've got everything in pieces, which is a good way while you're getting it all sorted, I've just run it straight to power. So once I've connected the battery up, then it's got power to that switch. So what that does is that just trips the relay, and it's making it think that the ECU thinks that the car, you've actually got your foot on the brake or you've got your foot on the clutch to start the car, because these have like a safety override, so you can't just start the car without putting your foot on the clutch or pushing the brake pedal, that sort of thing. So that bypasses that. So that's about it for the wiring. You can do the wiring underneath. If you still got your auto dash, you just got to make sure it's got the D up on the dash, and then once it's got the D, you're sweet. You can start it in neutral or drive. So in the car, I'll turn around, it's a bit of a mess in here. Okay, so this is where we're at sort of with the interior of the car. Now I got a manual dash with mine. This is the manual dash here, but the manual dash, once you plug it in, the auto doesn't get the drive signal, so it's not actually getting the signal to say that the thing's in drive. So when you go to rev it, it'll go to the rev cut, so you'll rev it to 3000 RPM and it'll go boom, 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 and then it won't actually rev. So you need to leave this dash in the car. I wanted to get rid of it because I didn't want to have the actual little indicator there, but without changing the ECU and also the wiring loom, because the wiring loom inside the car will need to be changed as well, which is just a massive job. It's not worth doing, not for just that little switch on the dash. And what I've done so far is where your CVT light is on the dash, I've just put a little Nismo sticker over it, and what I'll probably do is try and get a badge or something and I'll stick it over that. But all I've done so far is just taken the globe out of the back there, so that one's not as brightly lit as what your speedo, the odometer one is as well. So inside, what we need to do inside the car, you've obviously got to change all your pedals. I wouldn't bother trying to cut your pedals down, I'd be just replacing them. The clutch pedal isn't too hard to line up. It's obviously you can go off your preference. Like if you go off the factory, this pedal actually sits a little bit higher than the brake pedal if you look at the factory, but I've driven one and I found it feels a little bit too high. So what I've done is I've just put mine, lined it up with the brake pedal. It sits a touch lower than the brake pedal, but you can always adjust that later. So what you need to do, you need to remove your handbrake, which is your foot handbrake, and across the back of the firewall, up here, there's the handbrake mount, and it's spot welded to the firewall, and you need to drill out the spot welds and take that bracket off, otherwise you can't fit this up. And one tip which I got online from somebody, posted on one of the Skyline forums, is that cut the top bracket off your handbrake. It's very hard to see. I'll see if I can get the torch up there. You need to cut that. Just see it up there. You need to cut that bracket off and weld that to your pedal, just because it makes this quite flimsy once it's all hooked up. So that's one of the things, yeah, which I found online to do. Like I said, your brake pedal, just unbolt 4 bolts. That's out. Easy job to do. And that's pretty much all you need to modify under here. You obviously just got to remove all your cables and stuff like that out of the way, because your handbrake cable runs down through the console here. You need to take that, get rid of that. And one of the other things you need to remove is the cable, which is from your shifter and goes to your ignition barrel. And it's the cable where you can't take the key out unless the thing's back in park. So you need to take that cable out, and it just pops out from the bottom of the ignition barrel there. You can see where it's just, there's a plastic clip that just sits in here, and inside there is where the little keyway goes. Let's see if we can get the camera in a better spot, sorry. Yeah, the plastic clip sits in here, and there's a keyway that goes in there, and that's what stops you being able to turn the ignition off unless the thing's in park. So if you just remove that and take it off, you can just turn the switch to the car off at any point. You don't have to worry about it being in gear or anything like that. Okay, so into the next part of the job. This is probably the I wouldn't even say the most time consuming. It's actually been pretty easy so far. You've got to obviously cut the tunnel to fit your manual shifter in. I'm still waiting on a shifter. The guy who sent me the gearbox left the shifter at his workshop, so I've still got to get that. So obviously your rubber boot's going to sit a little bit further back in the tunnel. So what you need to do, drill a couple of more holes here, put a plate across here just to fill that area in, and then that brings you to the handbrake. So my handbrake's all hooked up, ready to go. I've got another tunnel for this. This is the manual tunnel, which I bought just because the guy said he'll throw it in anyway, and I thought, oh, I might cut all this section out and stuff like that, but the more I looked into it, I just thought it's just going to be a massive job and it's not really warranted. So what I've done, here in the tunnel is you need to move a bunch of wiring out of the way. This module sits up there, so obviously that needs to be brought back, but there's plenty of room to do it. There's enough wiring, you can actually extend. The wires were taped up like this, so you can extend it all a little bit further. Move your ABS, your airbag module back. Now when you've got the car with ignition on and stuff like that, you best either unplug this or make sure it's up this way. If you turn it upside down and start the car, it'll possibly set your airbags off. So I just unplugged it, move it out of your way. This sits here, so there's plenty of room, so your handbrake's there. You don't have to sort of worry about that. What I did is drilled 3 holes. You need to make an extra hole for the back one, because on the factory mount you can see there's an extra hole there, so I've had to drill another hole across to the bit more to the left there. These two, I just made the holes a little bit bigger, only because I had larger bolts to use, so they just fit in. You need to put a spacer under this side just so you can get the handbrake to sit level, and that's about it. And what I did is this section here, this piece here, let's take that light off. This section here is off the original handbrake. What I've done is I've cut the end off it on both sides, hollowed that out, so because you need to make it big enough to fit this cable through, because it's got like a square part on the section on the body, so you need to hollow that out enough to get that through, and then basically your handbrake comes up through and it sits in the factory bit. I've just put a spacer on there just for a little bit more adjustment in the thing. And that's it. I wouldn't say you need to cut the tunnel. I think it's not worth doing. It's a lot easier with that sitting in like that. That's pretty solid, and because we're going to drift the car too, I don't want it moving around, so that's why I've used pretty big bolts on it. All I need to do is hook up the handbrake wire, which you just need to run an extension from the handbrake light up there. Run that down to here. A lot of the other wiring all here for your auto and your shifter and stuff like that, that just can be just left now. And same as up here, I've removed the paddle shifters. They just unplug. There's just one plug there for the paddle shifter, so that just unscrews there, and 2 more screws up underneath, and the whole paddle shifter comes out. So if you want to be fussy, I'm going to put a blank steering column surround on it, which is just off a manual one, which that's on its way as well. I've had the car running. It'll be a bit hard to see, but that now says drive, and then the CVT light will be flashing. You can see it's slightly flashing just behind the Nismo logo there, but once you start it up, I've got no engine lights or anything like that on. I do have the ABS because I've been driving it in gear, and obviously it's up on the stands at the moment, so that'll all reset once you actually get it down. And I've got the airbag light on too, because I've got obviously the steering wheel's disconnected, the seat's disconnected, these wires, everything's all disconnected, airbag wires. Like I said, it's safer just to have it all disconnected while you're doing all this work, and then you don't have to worry about it. But I'll show you with that mod, with the saying the thing's in drive, I'll show you so you can drive rev. So the thing, it'll rev right out, that's as soon as you know it's doing that, you know you're going to be able to drive it up the street. Before, like I said, it only rev to 3,000 and go do that boom boom boom, and you know you've obviously got an issue with it there, sort of thing. So yeah, so we'll turn that off. Like I said, I'm going to try and cover that up with something. So but that's where we're at so far with the car. Stuff that you will need for your manual conversion, and stuff that I've sort of run into, and I'll go through. I'll put a list at the end of what you need and what you don't need. The thing you'll need is your plug off the gearbox, just for the reverse. I'm sure you could get around it if you didn't have this part of the wiring. I ended up getting a whole wiring loom. One other thing that won't fit anymore is obviously your footrest. I'm going to try and trim this one down and shorten it a little bit, so that'll hopefully fit. So here's the wiring that I have. It comes with, like I said, I got a full manual loom with it. This, I don't really think you need. These are all your auto bits. You can take all that off, take your auto filter off, the auto oil cooler can all come off. Like I said, you'll need to change this coupling on the diff. This won't fit with the manual tail shafts. So you can either just buy this piece, because it just unbolts, and just press it off, or just go and buy a whole manual LSD like I have. Obviously that's the old shifter, the old flywheel, all that sort of stuff. So what I really think all you need for the job is brake pedal, clutch pedal, master cylinder, the reservoir, slave cylinder, the lines actually on these, if you don't know, actually run through here, and they run actually underneath the plenum there. So what they do is that the clutch line comes across, runs down through here, comes down through the hole there, which is your drain, runs down there, and then goes up underneath the car to your slave cylinder. So you need that. You don't need an ECU, and I reckon it's probably easier not to bother with an ECU, but I'm going to do a second video. This will be a part one. The second video is once I get it in the out on the road, which hopefully will be in another week. Go for a drive, hopefully it hooks up and does what it's supposed to do, and we'll review if any other issues pop up there, and if I get an engine light or stuff like that, which I can read the codes, and if it's nothing major, we'll just don't worry about it, sort of thing. So it's a drift car, so who cares really? We just want the thing to drive and do what we want. So you don't need a loom. You need obviously a flywheel. You need the flywheel bolts. You can't use the flywheel bolts off the auto. The auto ones are too short, and the manual ones are I think they're a Torque 55 hex bolt. So you need to get them. Obviously clutch, flywheel, pressure plate, you know, gearbox, shifter, tail shafts, and I think with that, that's it. Obviously your handbrake, and you'll need the manual console. So you need the whole manual console, which just bolts straight up. There's a few holes which are slightly different between the manual console and the auto one, which I can show you on here. These sit a little bit lower, which is nothing. You just drill a hole into the same bracket that's already in there. As you notice, the consoles dip down a bit further. This all lines up fine. It's only these two that don't line up, which is nothing. And this section here all fits perfectly fine with the CVT8 dash. So you don't have to worry about anything like not fitting. So this is the manual surround. This is out of a coupe. That sits straight in, no problem. All lines up, which is great. So yeah, so obviously got to do a bit of a modification in here. I've got to tidy all the wiring up, make sure it's all out of the way of the handbrake and stuff like that, and that's it. So yeah, I think it's a pretty good job to do, and I think it's quite well worth it. I think for my manual conversion cost me $2,500, and it virtually come with a brand new Exceedi clutch, which is good because it saved me like $800 for a clutch with a lightweight flywheel too. So it still had Exceedi on it. So we use that. We use the old thrust bearing and stuff like that. Like, because I think a clutch kit for a 350Z or one of these is around about $900 with the flywheel sort of thing. So it's not all that not that cheap. But we've got a way of using all that, and yeah, and the rest of it's just labour. All the bolts that come out of the auto, so all the bell housing bolts, they're all the same. They all fit up. The starter motor doesn't need to be changed. The starter motor stays on the same side of the motor, which I think a few people have said you've got to swap it across. No, it's fine on the passenger side still. All the tail shaft bolts, they're all the same. The only one you have to try and get is the tail shaft bolts which mount to the diff. You'll need to get those four. Those four won't actually work because yours are, I think they're an Allen key head on the CV8's diff. And like I said, you just got to remove the auto lines, and yeah, it's just a bit of time and labour and stuff like that. The gearboxes are heavy. They're very awkward to get up on a jack. I tried doing it on my own a few times. I had to get my mate over to help me put the gearbox in. I just couldn't do it. So it was too much of a struggle. It was like it just sits on the jack right on the balance point of the box, and it just wants to roll off every 5 seconds. So that took me a bit of a pain to get it in. But anyway, so thanks for watching. I hope this helps people. If you've got any questions about the swap, send me a message on YouTube, and I'll try and answer it as best as I can. Like I said, there'll be another video in probably about 2 weeks, which will be we're driving it and checking everything else out. So anyway, thanks for watching. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. The more subscribers, the better. I'm not doing this for money, I'm just doing this for love and to help people out, you know. And the more subscribers I get, the obviously the better I feel the channel's doing too, and inspires me to put more content out. So anyway, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video. See ya. Bye.